Building the worksheets trend over time. In this lesson, we are going to be creating a worksheet to highlight the trend of mobility over time. As with our previous lesson, we will then replicate the worksheets for each of our 6 mobility metrics. So let's go back into our Tableau workbook. One thing I forgot to mention in my last video is to save and save religiously. So before we do anything else, let's save as. Let's call this our Google COVID-19 mobility dashboard, and let's click save. Strange that I didn't click save. Normally I'm pressing Ctrl S every few seconds because you never know. Tableau does have auto crash recovery, but better safe than sorry. So let's build our trend over time. Let's create a new worksheet and let's just call this trend, and let's call this parks. So let's build our parks version first, and then we can go on to replication. So let's take our parks change from baseline and drop it in. You can see the filters have already come across because the filters are on all of our sheets that use this data source. Let's turn this value to an average. And now let's drop dates into columns. Right click and select exact date. That's what we should see. That looks pretty good to me. However, let's pay homage to the Google Mobility Report and let's create an area chart with a strong line. So we already have the line, so let's keep a finger on Control or Command if you're using Mac and duplicate this across. Let's change one of them, doesn't matter which one. Let's change this to an area chart. Beautiful, so we have an area chart and a line. I'm going to take the color down to about 20%, so this slightly lighter. We'll adjust this as we format our final dashboard, but let's right click on the second pill, select dual axis, right click on the axis and select synchronize. Perfect. With that done, you can now hide one of the axes. We don't need both. And actually we don't need the text here either, so let's hide that as well. Let's double click on the axis and leave the title blank. So there we have it. We have our trends for park. Don't worry about the color. We will assign colors and all of that stuff when we assemble the final dashboard. We are going to be tweaking stuff like the tooltips and everything else. But for now, I just want the functional mechanics created. So with that said, let's go through a duplication. Let's duplicate this worksheet. Let's rename this to grocery and pharmacy. And all we're going to do is take the pill, replace. So by dropping on top, you immediately replace. Let's replace both. And make sure both of them are an average and not a summation. Once you have that, make sure that axes are still synchronized. It should be, but it's always good to double check, and we could just hide the header. That's our second trend done. Let's keep on duplicating. Duplicate. Let's change the name again. We are going to call this residential. Now we're going to take our residential value. Again, drop it on top. Replication is key. Repetition is the best teacher. In a lot of my dashboards, I do this all the time. I create an initial version, then I just have to replicate and replicate. And more today, the more I work with Tableau, the more I'm replicating my older works. Almost like I have a portfolio of professional work that I just bring from place to place. So when you work with me, I'm not building from scratch. I already have this vast depth that I could just choose from. We're almost there. Just 2 more. And I would encourage you to do the same. I would encourage you to start building up a portfolio of work, a body of work that is not essentially tied to a client, so you're not breaking any NDAs or non-disclosures. However, you're taking your learnings from one client, making it generic, and then being able to apply it elsewhere. It's a valuable tool to have, and again, it does not break any of your agreements, as long as obviously you don't copy the exact logo and design. If this is similar, then it should be fine. But again, I'm using Google as my inspiration. I'm pretty sure Google will not sue me, but who knows, they might one day. We're almost there. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 more, and then we are done with the section. So right click and duplicate. Let's rename this to transit stations. Make sure you drop on top, so you replace, right click, make sure they're averages, make sure we're synchronized, hide the header, double click. Let's remove the title. The title is not needed because we're going to have titles anyway in our dashboard. And our final worksheet, right click, duplicate. Let's call this work places. Nice and simple. As you can see, this is pretty straightforward and pretty, don't know what, pretty standard. But here we have it. We have our additional trend dashboards now. So once again, what I want us to do is Control Save. This is actually one of the quickest ways to build a pack itself, is that you build the initial template of your report and then just replicate. Keep as much of the formatting as possible, so you don't need to create a brand new worksheet each and every time. 90% of the times I just replicate because I keep a lot of my stuff. Anyway, this is our second suite of dashboards. We're almost there. See you in the next lesson. Make sure you click save.